Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for this year's World Leaders Session. The moderator of this session is former Foreign Minister of Korea, Minister Han Seung-ju. Minister, let me give the mic over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm Han Seung-ju. Does it work? And I feel privileged to chair this session, this World Leaders Session on the subject of sharing a common vision for Asia's future. Before we start, I would like to share you an episode with Vice President Al Gore that I had some 25 years ago, and I'm glad that he's out of the room so that I can talk about it. In the White House, when he was Vice President and I was the Foreign Minister, I had a chance to have a discussion with him for about 1 hour on the timing of the deployment of Patriot system in Korea. And as I was listening to him this morning, so eloquent, so persuasive, and so moving, I wonder how I won the argument at that time, because I was arguing that we should deploy the Patriot missiles a couple of months later than the United States wanted to. And ultimately, I won that argument with Mr. Gore. And I could have ascertained that if he had been here, but it was a very interesting meeting I had then. The topic is sharing a common vision for Asia's future. And in this connection, I also want to mention that once, back in 2004, I attended the Democratic Party convention selecting their presidential candidate in Boston. And at that time, Ted Sorensen, who was known as John F. Kennedy's alter ego, came out on the podium. He could not see, therefore he was helped to come on the podium. And what impressed me from what he said, he started by saying that I'm losing my vision, my sight, but I still have my vision. So, as you all know, sight is what you see with your eyes. Vision is what you see with your mind. And so today, I'm very happy that we have an opportunity to hear from our leaders to know what they see in their mind. Today, we are seeing disruptions and changes in our life at an unprecedented rate and at all different levels. Much of this has to do with things that we associate with globalization, free trade, advanced technology, and instantaneous digital communication methods. These developments were facilitated and supported by the post-World War II liberal world order. But unfortunately, in the aftermath of the Brexit vote, the recent US election, and the midst of growing nationalist movements around the world, we can also see more clearly that there are large groups of people who feel negatively affected by the changes brought about globalization, liberal order, and multilateralism. The subject of this session is Vision for the Future of Asia. There are reasons for being both pessimistic and optimistic. Some people talk about the Thucydides trap, which explains the likelihood of conflict between a revisionist power and a status quo power. Others talk about the Kindleberger trap, which makes the rising power either unwilling or unable to assume the burden of keeping the region stable and in progress. In addition, there is the problem in Asia of North Korean threat of nuclear weapons or missiles. There are also problems arising from the rise of nationalism, arms race, and territorial disputes. But there are also sources of optimism, reasons to have a brighter vision for the future. For the most part, Asian countries are economically vibrant, and regional cooperation is making slow but steady progress. There's also a remarkable growth of economic interdependence, people-to-people exchanges, and cultural cooperation. So although with our sight we see with our eyes possible problems and obstacles for Asia's future, in our mind we can see much brighter and optimistic vision for the future of Asia. Today, we have prominent and distinguished leaders from the region and beyond to give us their vision on the future of Asia. We have speakers whom I will announce in the order in which they will speak. First is former President of Indonesia, Her Excellency Megawati Sukarno Putri, former President of Portugal, His Excellency Aníbal Cavaco Silva, founding and former President of Mongolia, His Excellency Punsalma Ochirat, and former Prime Minister of the Republic of Korea, His Excellency Lee Hong-gu. Now, I would like to invite Her Excellency Megawati Sukarno Putri, former President of Indonesia, to have the podium to speak.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be with you. His Excellency Mr. Al Gore, the Vice President of the United States of America, the former Vice President, His Excellency Mr. Cavaco Silva Nabel, former President of Portugal, His Excellency Mr. Ochibart Punsalma, the former President of Mongolia, His Excellency Mr. Han Seung-soo, the former Prime Minister of the Republic of Korea, His Excellency Mr. Lee Hong-gu, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Korea, and His Excellency Mr. Won Hyu-ryong, the Governor of Jeju, the Republic of Korea. It is a tremendous honor to me to be present at this highly important forum to share with you the idea of strengthening and enhancing global peace and prosperity. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this time my attendance to Jeju Island is shrouded with grief. Only a few days ago, a suicidal bombing in Jakarta, Indonesia, took the lives of several people. This was, however, not the first attack that our country had to bear. Attacks driven by religious bigotry. Similar attacks also took place in Bangkok, Thailand. It is also sad to say that even until today, the city of Marawi in the Philippines is fighting the attacks and invasion done by a group claiming to be affiliated with the ISIS. In fact, such a terror was not only spread in Asia, but also in other parts of the world, including England as the victim of recent Manchester bombing. Distinguished guests, is this the modern civilization? Let us make a comparison to the one of the most important event in 20th century. That is the Asia-Africa Conference held in Bandung, Indonesia. Imagine, it was in 1955. The leaders Asia-Africa nations, with all limitations existed, came and convened in Bandung City, Indonesia. They removed the barriers of various different races, ethnic groups, religions, and beliefs. Their presence also represented various political and economic streams, that they could use all differences as their power. It was not merely for their nation's benefit. The differences had been the power to build new civilization that was the independent of African, Asian, and even Latin American nation. We live with the event. We think about it. Compare this with various conflicts today. It breaks my heart to see the bloodshed as the impact of different understanding toward religious thought. Allow me to quote from President Sukarno's speech which he delivered at the opening of the Asia-Africa Conference on April 18, 1955. I know that in Asia and Africa, there is greater diversity of religions, faiths, and beliefs than in the other continents of the world. Asia and Africa are the classic birthplaces of faiths and ideas which have spread all over the world. There are perhaps more religions here than in other regions of this globe, but must we be divided by the multiformity of our religious life? Is it true each religion has its own history, its own individuality, its own rise from the tree, its special pride in its own beliefs, its own mission, its special truths which it desires to propagate? But unless we realize that all great religions are one in their message of tolerance and in their insistence of the observance of the principle of life and let life, unless the followers of each religion are prepared to give the same consideration to the rights of others everywhere, unless every state does its duty to ensure that the same rights are given to the followers of all faiths, unless these things are done, religion is debased and its true purpose perverted. Unless Asian African countries realize their responsibilities in this matter and take steps jointly to fulfill them, the very strength of religious beliefs, which should be a source of unity and a bulwark against foreign interference, will cause its disruption and may result in destroying the hard-won freedom which large parts of Asia and Africa have achieved by acting together. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I think the ideas, principles, and the ideals of the founding fathers of the Asian nations, members of Asia-Africa Conference, should be the basis for the Asian collective action and movement. It includes the response to the growing force of extreme movements in the name of religion. It is the right time to learn from our founding fathers, learn from the history of Asia-Africa Conference that even the inherent diversity in all living creatures cannot survive, cannot be maintained without a collective effort. In other words, diversity should be maintained by working together. Globalization has resulted in a seemingly borderless world without dividers. Various problems emerge and are interconnected across countries. Problems of human trafficking, drug trafficking, financial crime, up to terrorism. Which one of those problems which are not interconnected and involve people across countries? Do not think that those problems only hit the so-called third world countries. Look at the multi-dimension crisis occurring in the developed countries. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in this occasion, with all due respect, I would like to thank the former Vice President Al Gore, who has tirelessly voiced his opinion on the issue of global climate change and its concomitant impact on our only planet Earth and human civilization. I agree with His Excellency Al Gore's stand at the recent Cannes Film Festival. Not even a president can stop the climate movement. So true, not a single power is capable to stop climate change. However, it does not mean that we just stay still or being trapped into the commercialization of the climate change issue through carbon trade. I closely look at the international agreements regarding global climate change, which one of them is the 2015 Paris Agreement. This agreement changed the structure and pattern of emission reduction, which was previously regulated by the Kyoto Agreement. It is the time for us to seriously drum up a global effort to achieve the target of the world emission reduction set by the Paris Agreement. I ask all of you to involve and actively participate in the movement of climate justice. We also should raise the awareness of the developed countries, which is indicated to have contributed largely to the destruction of the atmosphere through the decades-long accumulation of greenhouse gases. It is the time for them to solve their emission debt. Despite of this, we should actively push international agreement which consider on a method of determining emission level based on emission per capita with the main principle. Each individual in any part of the earth has the same right to the atmosphere. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today, 1st June 2017, 72 years ago, President Sukarno gave a political speech, the June 1, in 1945, speech the birth of Pancasila. Pancasila was later established as the fundamental principle of the Republic of Indonesia. Pancasila means 5 principles, 5 basic principles. First, belief in God. All the people should culturally have a belief in God that is void of any religious egoism. A belief in God and be of noble character, respecting each other. Second, a just and civilized humanity. This second principle is welding nationalism. Nationalism is a freedom movement, an answer to oppression, and a great inspiration emerging from freedom. Through this principle, Indonesia commits itself to reach justice and prosperity, not only for Indonesia, but also for other nations. We nationalists, we love our nation and other nations. Third, Indonesian unity. This principle shows the necessity of holding tightly to each other. It could thus also be interpreted as internationalism. There is no conflict between the idea of nationalism and internationalism. Internationalism can only grow and develop in the fertile soil of nationalism. Through the principle of internationalism, every nation respects and guards the right of all nations, small or big. With true internationalism, a nation shows itself to be mature and responsible, leaving behind feelings of racial supremacy, shedding off chauvinism and cosmopolitanism. Fourth, discussion and consensus democracy. Democracy is not the monopoly or the invention of Western social regulations. Democracy is people's genuine condition, although it underwent changes in its implementation to adjust to specific social conditions. Fifth, social justice is interconnected, inseparable to social welfare. That is our Pancasila. Belief in God, nationalism, internationalism, democracy, and social justice. This is the way of life of the Indonesian nation. Pancasila is a guidance in all the pillars of life, spiritually, politically, economically, socially, and culturally, which we fight for. Please consider that Pancasila has a universal meaning and can be internationally implemented. It could be the spirit and principle to find solution for living together in the 21st century. I'm really sure and I hope it would be our common conviction that we could take common action that choose peace path for any conflicts and disputes. Because I believe none of us have the goal to transfer the hatred and conflict to the young generation. I humbly offer you the principle of Pancasila to become the way of life of the Asian nations as a contribution to the world peace, as a serious endeavor to end poverty and oppression. With the spirit of Pancasila, I am confident that Asia is capable of fighting for justice and social welfare of the world, now and in this time come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now I would like to call on His Excellency Hannibal Cavaco Silva to speak.
distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing times of great uncertainty in the global, political, and economic order. Signs of trade protectionism have emerged. Globalization is at stake. There is a sense of deterioration of the geopolitical environment. Several countries are preparing to increase military expenditures. Cyber threats have increased. Populism politics is gaining ground in several regions of the world. In this international context, peace, security, and prosperity in Asia is a timely subject. My question is the following. Can the reinforcement of the relationship between the European Union and East Asia contribute to security and prosperity in the region? I think so. The European Union is the biggest economic area in the world, ahead of the United States. And it is the world's biggest trading power in terms of exports and imports. The European Union is the biggest export market for more than 100 countries. Not less important than the European Union as a whole is the Eurozone, the core of Europe. 19 countries with a single central bank sharing a single currency, the euro, and a single monetary policy. It is a mistake to think that the Eurozone is going to break up. The consequences for a country that leaves the euro are so negative that I cannot envisage a government taking such a decision. The United Kingdom belongs to the European Union, but not to the Eurozone. Even so, the Brexit negotiations are going to be very difficult, and the costs will be much higher for Britain than for the other 27 member states. I'm confident that in the future, more member states will integrate the Eurozone. Having been Prime Minister of Portugal during the first 10 years of my country's membership of the European Union, and having been at the core negotiations of the treaty that created the Economic and Monetary Union, I am well aware how this great achievement is important to the international financial system. The euro is already a global payment currency used in parallel with the dollar. It has been clear that China wishes the European Union to be strong and the euro to be an international currency. I think that it is in the Chinese interest that the European Union is an economic power with a voice in the international stage. It contributes to mitigate the weight of the United States as a Western voice in world affairs. In Europe, it was possible to create a regional order based on a large and coherent set of common interests and values. In Asia, there isn't a coherent regional order grouping several countries. Bilateral relations are dominant. The extent of political dialogue and cooperation among East Asia countries is very limited, and misunderstandings and frictions emerge very often. The North Korea nuclear question cannot be solved without the coordination between the United States and China. Both want North Korea to abandon its nuclear program. But it has been difficult for them to agree on a strategy for cooperation to ensure a sustainable security in the region. China has tolerated the provocative actions of the North Korean regime. But I am convinced that China has its own red lines as far as North Korea military provocations are concerned. China does not want its economic and social development and its ambitions of global leadership to be put at stake by a neighbor whose nuclear program is condemned by the whole international community. In this context, it is my firm belief that in its cooperation between East Asia countries and the European Union may contribute to security and prosperity in the region. It would be beneficial to make the European Union an integrated part of the balance of power in the East Asian region, joining the position that is already occupied by the United States. I'm convinced that the European Union by itself is a valuable asset for the region. The European Union is strongly committed to peace, freedom, and democracy. As the major world producer of goods and services, the European Union is a voice in international politics. The European Union had a crucial role in the negotiations to achieve a nuclear deal with Iran. The European Union is a defender of multilateral free trade and respects the rules of the World Trade Organization. The European Union is in the front line in supporting the implementation of the Paris Agreement on climate change. The European Union, in fact, is a reliable partner. The economic and political relations between the European Union and the East Asian countries is already intense. The European Union and China have established a strategic partnership, and the European Union is China's first export market. A comprehensive investment agreement between the European Union and China is under negotiation. A summit meeting between the European Union and China is going to take place tomorrow in Brussels. I'm sure that in that summit meeting between the European Union and China tomorrow, the security in the region will be part of the agenda. The European Union has a strategic partnership and a free trade agreement with South Korea. The European Union is South Korea's third largest export market. In the current political circumstances, a more active role of the European Union in East Asia, apart from the United States, would make it easier for South Korea to have a stronger voice in the issues concerning the security in the region. It would help to make diplomacy more balanced. A free trade and strategic partnership agreement between the European Union and Japan is under negotiation. I am convinced that it's possible to do more, strengthening European Union partnership with China, South Korea, and Japan on major political and global issues, and by this way contribute to transforming East Asia into a more cooperative system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The next speaker will be His Excellency Punsama Ochibat from Mongolia.
Эрхэмсэг зөвхөн тэгтээ найдаа та бүхэнд өдрийн мэнд хүргэе. Аз төвийн мандайлагчид эрхэмсэг та бүхэнтэй энэхүү Jeju форум дээр уулзаж инх тавин хөгжил цэцэглэлт ба нийтлэг зорилтуудад хүрэх арга замын талаар санал бодлоо солилцох гэж байгаадаа баяртай байна, сэтгэл хангалуун байна. Jeju форумоор дэлхийн лидерүүдийн өнөөдөр хэлэлцэх гэж байгаа Азийн ирээдүйн төлөөх нийтлэг алсын хараа сэдв нь бидний өмнө тулгарч байгаа нийтлэг зорилтуудынхаа хэтийн төлөвийг тодорхойлж түүндээ хүрэх арга замаа эрэлхийлэхэд чухал ач холбогдолтой гэж үзэж байна. Яг тэгвэл 21-р зууныг Азийн зуун болно гэж хэлдэг. Энэ үнэхээр тийм байна. Дэлхийн хөгжлийн хандлагад Азийн эзлэх байр суурь гүйцэтгэх үүрэг хариуцлага жилээс жилд нэмэгдсээр байна. Үүний зэрэгцээгээр бидэнд хүндрэл бэрхшээлтэй цөөнгүй асуудал сорилтууд бий. Тэгэхдээ бид тэр бүхнийг дахин давтан ярихгүйгээр олсон амжилт хүрсэн төвшнөө бахархан ярьж, баттган бэхжүүлж, өөрсөддөө байгаа агуу их боломжийг ашиглаж хөгжил цэцгэлтийн алс ирээдүйг бодиттойгоор төсөөлж хэрэгжүүлэх арга зам механизмаа тодорхойлох нь илүү үр дүнтэй ач холбогдолтой гэж бодож байна. Азийн орнуудын нийтлэг зорилт нь инх тайвныг хамгаалах, тогтвортой хөгжлийг хангахад орших юм. Инх тайвангүйгээр тогтвортой хөгжих боломжгүй, тогтвортой хөгжилгүйгээр инх тайвныг бэхжүүлэх боломжгүй гэдгийг хүндрэлтэн мэднэ. Тийм учраас энэ удаагийн Jeju-гийн форумын хэлэлцэх асуудлын сэдвээр Азийн ирээдүйг инх тайван хөгжил цэцгэлттэй холбон үзснийг би талархан дэмжиж байна. 2015 онд байгуулагдсан уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтийн тухай Парисын хэлэлцээр нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын чуулганаар баталсан доктортой хөгжлийн 2030 гэсэн энэ хоёр баримт бичиг бол дэлхийн ирээдүйн хөгжлийн суурийг тодорхойлсон чухал ач холбогдолтой баримт бичгүүд юм. Монгол улсын их хурал Парисын хэлэлцээрийг сойрхон баталж Монгол улс доктортой хөгжлийн 2030 оны хөтөлбөрөөр баталсан гэдгийг хэлэхэд бас таатай байна. Миний ойлгож байгаагаар доктортой инх тайвныг эдийн засгаа доктортой хөгжүүлэх замаар хангаж болох юм. Үүний тулд өргөн хүрээтэй хамтын ажиллагаагаа бэхжүүлэх хэрэгтэй. Олон талын хамтын ажиллагаа нь мэдлэг туршлагаа дэлгэрүүлэх, технологи, санхүүгийн нөөцөө дайчлах, Аз төвийн улс орнуудын олон талд хамтын ажиллагааг бэхжүүлвэл Аз төвийн хөгжлийн суурь улам бат болох юм. Энэ нь дэлхийн нийтж инх тайван хөгжлийг авчрах учиртай. Үүнийг би Азийн ирээдүйн төлөөх нийтлэг алсын харааны гол фокус гэж үзэж байна. Тэгтээ найдаа би Монгол улсын олон талын болон бүс нутгийн хамтын ажиллагааны талаар Азийн ирээдүйтэй холбоотой байж болох цөөн хэдэн зүйлийг хэлхийг хүсэж байна. Зүүн хойд Аз бол Монгол улсын хувьд өөрийн орны цаашдын хөгжлийг хангахад чухал ач холбогдолтой бүс нутаг юм. Монгол улсын гадаад хөрөнгө оруулалтын 40 орчим хувь, гадаад худалдааны 70 гаруй хувь, экспортын 80 гаруй хувь нь зүүн хойд Азийн бүс нутгийн орнуудтай хийгдэж байгаа бөгөөд улс төрийн салбарын харилцаа идэвхтэй хөгжиж байна. Энэхүү бүс нутагт манай орны олон мянган иргэд урт буян хугацаагаар зочилдог түүх соёлын хувьд ижил төстэй орнууд оршдог ийм онцлогтой бүс нутаг. Ийм учраас Монгол улс зүүн хойд Азийн ирээдүйн хөгжлийн загварыг тодорхойлоход идэвхтэй оролцох сонирхолтой байдаг юм. Миний ойлгож байгаагаар зүүн хойд Азийн ирээдүйн хөгжлийг тодорхойлоход нөлөөлөх хоёр хүчин зүйл байна. Нэг нь улс төр аюулгүй байдлын аспект, нөгөө нь эдийн засгийн интеграцид оролцоо юм. Энэ хоёр хүчин зүйлийн эдийн засгийн интеграцийг тэргүүн ээлжинд тавьбал улс төр аюулгүй байдлын асуудал түүнийг дагаад шийдвэрлэгдэхэд дөхөмтэй болох юм гэж бодож байна. Азийн улс орн бүрд өөрийн тулгамдсан асуудлууд бий. Өөрийн өвөрмөц ёс заншил, уламжлал, үнэт зүйл бас бий. Эдгээрээс гадна дэлхийн нийтийн болон бүс нутгийн нэгдмэл эрх ашиг гэж бас бий. Бид энэ нэгдмэл эрх ашигаа хамтран тодорхойлж, хамтран шийдвэрлэх арга замаа хэлэлцэж олох гэж Jejuд цуглаад байна. Энэ утгаараа Jeju форум өнөөдөр Азийн бүс нутгийн инг тайван хөгжил цэцгэлтийн ирээдүйн талаар хэлэлцэх хариуцлагатай энэ дөр болоо зогсохгүй хамтын ажиллагааны хамтарсан Аз хөтөлбөрийг хэрэгжүүлэх арга замыг тодорхой хэлэлцэх ийм нөхцөлийг бүрдүүлж байгаа таатай юм. Цаашид бидэнд юу хэрэгтэй байна вэ гэвэл юуны өмнө бид бүс нутагта итгэл үнэмшилтэй инг тайван аж төрөх тийм нөхцөлийг хамтын хүчээр тогтоож тогтвортой хангах хэрэгтэй байгаа юм. Үүний тулд хамтын хүчин чармаалт хэрэгтэй юм. Тэгтээ ноёдоо 21-р зууны глобал асуудлуудын нэг бол хүний эрх, хүний аюулгүй байдал юм. Хүний аюулгүй байдлыг цэрэг зэвсгийн хүчээр хангах үе өнгөрч хүний эрх аюулгүй байдлыг эдийн засгийн өсөлт хөгжлөөр хангах цаг ирсэн байна. Үүнээс үндэслэн зүүн хойд Азийн болон бүхэлд Азийн аюулгүй байдлыг хангах гол арга зам бол эдийн засгийн хөгжлийн төлөө хамтарч ажиллах явдал юм. Үүнд саяхан Бээжинд болсон бүсва зам олон улсын чуулга уулзалтын шийдвэр чухал үүрэг гүйцэтгэнэ гэж найдаж байна. Хүний аюулгүй байдлыг хангах явдлыг би Азийн ирээдүйн төлөөх алсын харааны хамгийн гол асуудлын нэг гэж бодож байна. Цаг уурын өөрчлөлт, дулаалал, хүнсний аюулгүй байдал, цэвэр усны хомсдол, байгалийн баялагын тэнцвэрт байдал, байнга өсөн нэмэгдэж байгаа эрчим хүчний хэрэглээ, хүрэлцээ гэх мэтийн дэлхийн хэмжээний маш олон асуудал байна. Энэ бүхэн бол эцсийн дүндээ хүний аюулгүй байдлыг хангахтай холбоотой байна. Эдгээрийг бид олон талын хамтын ажиллагааны хүчээр шийдэж чадна. Азийн ирээдүй бол олон талын хамтын ажиллагааны хүчинд тулгуурлан хөгжих болно. Jeju форумын үйл ажиллагааг би энэ л чиглэлд явагдаж байна гэж үнэлж байна. Тэгтээ ноёдоо Азийн бүс нутгийн нэг чухал хэсэг зүүн хойд Азийн хөгжил цэцгэлтийн боломжийн талаар зарим нэг санаа хэлье. Зүүн хойд Аз бол дэлхийн 3 гол үсийн нэг гэдгийг та бид мэднэ. Зүүн хойд Азад Солонгосын хойг багтдаг. Солонгосын хойг нь Евразийн хамгийн зүүн талын цэг бөгөөд торгоны замын зүүн хэсгийн эхлэл гэж үздэг. Солонгосын хойг байршил, эдийн засгийн өсөлт, ирээдүйн нөөц боломжоор зүүн хойд Азийн бүс нутагта хамгийн хамтын ажиллагааны чухал цэг бөгөөд ачаагараа зорчиг тээврийг дамжуулан өнгөрүүлэх гүүр болж чадах ийм онцлогийг өөртөө агуулдаг. Хэрвээ хоёр Солонгос төмөр замынхаа сүлжээг сэргэн хөгжүүлж бүс нутгийн тээврийн сүлжээтэй холбож торгоны замтай нийлвэл Бусанаас Европ руу далайгаар тээвэрлэж буй ачааны зарим хэсгийг Хятадын зүүн хойд 3 муж Оросын холбооны улсын алс дорнотын бүс нутаг, Монгол улс, Япон улсын экспорт импортын тодорхой хэсэг, Солонгосын төмөр замаар дамжин торгоны замын экспрессийн бүрэлдэхүүн хэсэг болон болох боломж бүрдэх юм биш үү гэсэн асуудал бодогддгийг. Монгол улс бүгд найрамдах ардчилсан Солонгос улс зэрэг зүүн хойд Азийн олон орон эрдэнэ соёлын асар их нөөцтэй. Хэрэв хүн төрөлхтний соёл иргэншлийн материаллык үндэс нь байгалийн баялаг байдгийг бодвол түүнийг Азийн хөгжил цэцэглэлтийн тусын тулд эдийн засгийн эргэлтэнд оруулах чиглэлээр хамтран ажиллах боломж байгаа юм а. Энэ мэтчилэн баг гэлгүй байгаа боломжуудаа ашиглаад байвал бид эдийн засгийн хөгжлийн хүрээгээ бүс нутгаа улам тэлж оролцогч бүр харилцан ашигтай байх хамтын ажиллагаагаа хөгжүүлж чадвал Азийн ирээдүйн төлөөх бидний хүчин чармаалт үр дүнд хүрч чадна гэж бодож байна. Баярлалаа.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Last but not least, we will have speech by former Prime Minister of the Republic of Korea, Lee Hong-koo.
I think it's already lunchtime, so let me be brief. Our topic for this panel is sharing a common vision for Asian peace. To have a common vision for the future, we have to have a certain common understanding for our past. But I'm not going into the recitation of long history. And we have heard from President Megawati some of the Asian perspective on our past history, going back to the leadership of late President Sukarno. But let me take my time to present Korean perspective. For one reason, Korea has become the focal point of conflict among many parties, including the major powers, and there seems to be a gathering crowd for possibility of war around Korean Peninsula. So let me just concentrate on the Korean case. We had somewhat unfortunate history in the 20th century, and for 35 years we had lost our independence as a victim of the age of imperialism. But in those days of independence movement, Koreans had resolved that our objective is not only to gain our independence, but also bring a peace to Asia. Because without peace, we cannot guarantee our independence. In other words, our independence and Asian peace is necessary condition for each other. But that has been our position ever since. This is partly because of our peculiar geopolitical setting. Namely, we have three major powers as our immediate neighbors: China, Japan, and Russia. And since the end of the Second World War, the fourth neighbor is the United States, which has become a Pacific power in the region. And just a few minutes ago, our colleague from the Mongolia has told us that the importance for Korea in connecting this geopolitical setting to Central Asia and all the way maybe to Europe. So all in all, we have become a country which consider our fate closely tied with internationalism and international development. And we've been trying our best to utilize that vision to bring a both political and economic development. That big change had come around 1987, exactly 30 years ago. We made a successful transition from authoritarian politics to a democracy. And I have to recognize the influence of Portugal, among others, because the transition to democracy from authoritarianism in Southern Europe, particularly by Portugal, Spain, and Greece, had tremendous influence to our effort to make a transition to democracy. And Mr. Cavaco Silva and I am very proud of the fact that we are the founding members of Club de Madrid, which was organized in 1990 as a club of countries which made a successful transition to democracy and try to help everybody to preserve it and also spread the democracy around the world. I have to mention that in that period of transition to democracy and afterward, the North Korea and South Korea made a major effort toward the reconciliation. In 1991, on the basis of new unification formula advanced by South Korea, which proposed that we should accept the fact that there are two governments, North and South, and we have to find a way to live peacefully together and move toward unification in a peaceful way. We had a series of interesting meetings and useful meetings, and in 1991 came up with three very positive results. First, we had signed what we call joint formal agreement for reconciliation, non-aggression, exchange, and cooperation. Second, the North and South, two Koreas have agreed that we will apply for a membership in the United Nations. And in fact, UN General Assembly voted to accept two Koreas, both as members of the United Nations in 1991, and we did. And third, North and South Korea had made a joint declaration to keep the Korean Peninsula nuclear free. This is important because Koreans actually experienced the horrors of nuclear age, because when the bomb was dropped in Hiroshima, in Japan, in August 1945, that single bomb had brought 150,000 casualties, of which about 20% were Koreans, because many Korean workers were brought there to work, and there were some Korean residents as well. So we quickly agreed that the best way to keep Koreans safe in the nuclear age is not to have nuclear weapons on the peninsula. That was declared again in 1991. Now, I mentioned all this for a simple reason. As you know, in recent years, particularly recent months, with the acceleration of North Korean effort to complete their nuclear program, their missile program, and also a strong stance taken by President Trump in the United States, the possibility of military showdown has become real, and everybody is extremely concerned, not only in Korea, but around the world. At the same time, there is all kinds of speculations coming out of Washington and Beijing and other places that there might be a reopening of major dialogue to resolve this problem peacefully. So we are now standing at a very important juncture. And I'm sure in this Jeju forum this year, there will be a very number of interesting discussions on this topic. And we have done so in the past conferences, and this certainly is the time to discuss this. And I have a hope that those constructive measures taken almost 30 years ago by North and South Korea will furnish a basis for dialogue. The solution is basically a two-state solution, but not two-state solution for permanent division, but providing a peaceful path in which two Koreas could work together to reach the final goal of uniting a single nation, single national community, single commonwealth. So we have a tremendous hope for that end, and this year's Jeju Forum will also give some insights to this end. Finally, just to save the time, let me mention one more thing. Again, looking back to history, almost half a century ago, a little over, we had, as you might remember, a world came pretty close to the major global war, namely the Cuban Missile Crisis. So really, the world was watching how the great powers would resolve this crisis. You remember the last moment, the conversation between late President Kennedy and Chairman Khrushchev had brought a resolution of that crisis. And 50 years later, all the parties, not a single party had received any fatal blow from that solution. And it seems that the relationship between U.S. and Cuba as immediate neighbors seem to be improving very fast in recent months. Also, the family of Mr. Castro are still in power. So we can learn from this experience something. And as I mentioned earlier, a two-state solution guaranteed by international community, guaranteed by the immediately involved powers, may bring some solution. Finally, I'd just like to add one more item for your consideration. In East Asia, starting from Japan all the way to our ASEAN friends, and add to this Australia, this constitutes the geographically East Asia. Everybody has been and has accepted China as the sole nuclear armed state in the region. That's all right with everybody. But of course, what North Korea is trying to do is that from now on, there could be two nuclear states, China and North Korea. Obviously, it's not a very acceptable proposal. So everybody, but particularly China, has to make its position very clear on this and try to work together with all the neighbors and the global community, including our European friends, to bring everybody together to guarantee the kind of resolution I have mentioned. So I hope this year's Jeju conference will provide added pressure and added stimulus necessary for peaceful resolution of this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Lee. We don't have the time to summarize or go further into their speeches. Suffice it to say that former President Megawati emphasized religious freedom, tolerance, and integration as embodied in Pancasila. President Cavaco Silva emphasized the close relationship between security and economy and the important role of Europe for Asia. President Ochirat emphasized the importance of the relationship between prosperity and peace as much as, or even more, than the importance of security issue. Prime Minister Lee talked about the importance of history and what is happening now. He thinks that Asia, and Korea in particular, is at a crossroads, and he talked about the interaction between geopolitics and the Korean problem. Now we have time for about 5 minutes, and we will have time for a couple of questions or comments. I would like to invite questions, but I hope you will make it very brief and pointed. Thank you. Anybody wants to ask a question or make a comment? Maybe the presentations were so complete and left no questions to be answered. Now I think if you want to make any comment, yes.
You see, I would like to come back to the problem of the security in the region and the nuclear question coming from North Korea. And I think it would be worthwhile reminding the case of Iran. Although I know very well that it's much more difficult to deal with North Korea than with Iran. The strategy that was followed in the case of Iran aimed at enforcing tough sanctions against Iran and at the same time promoting dialogue to achieve a diplomatic solution. There was a coordination of position among the participants in the negotiation. The European Union was coordinating the positions of Germany, UK, and France. And afterwards, talking to the United States, to China, and to Russia. It seems to me that behind the tensions in the Korea Peninsula are three factors. First, North Korea ballistic missile tests in defiance of United Nations security resolutions. Second, the deployment in South Korea of an American anti-missile system. Third, insufficient enforcement of sanctions against North Korea, an area in which the role of China is fundamental. So it seems to me that a comprehensive negotiation is required. In East Asia, as I've said before, bilateral dialogue is dominant. However, there are problems which are common to several countries. So it would be important to discuss those problems together. Why not putting up a type of East Asia G7? Those countries from the region, plus European Union, United States, and Russia. I know that there are historical difficulties, but there are moments in life in which pragmatism is fundamental to prevent problems from becoming very, very serious. As to China, we don't know the real meaning of the statement made by President Xi in the World Economic Forum in Davos. He said that China should guide economic globalization. But China wouldn't like North Korea to jeopardize its ambitions of global leadership. We know very well that the United States and China have been in the same side in the Security Council on the condemnation of the ballistic missile tests. Both countries are indispensable, we know very well, indispensable in the international order. But it is obvious, at least for the Europeans, that China wants to keep rival forces far from its frontier. But it would be a big mistake to think that the United States is a declining power. I know that there are plenty of people in China that the United States belongs to the past. It's now a declining country. But I would like to reaffirm that in the present circumstances, it would be beneficial to have a second Western voice. I'm thinking about the European Union in the discussion of questions related to the security in the region. And to conclude, I would say that it is in fact a moral duty for all countries in the world who are committed to peace to do all in their hands to prevent the present global uncertainties. And there is plenty of uncertainties, and not only coming from the new American administration. We are living a time of terrible uncertainties, but it's fundamental to prevent that those uncertainties become uncontrollable dangers for the humanity. And I think this would be an important message coming from the Jeju Forum for Peace and Democracy.
Well, thank you very much for your very useful and wise recommendation and suggestion. I'm sure there will be several comments and discussions on what you said. Unfortunately, I think our time has run out, but you gave us a very good basis for our thought and for the discussion over lunch, if possible. Thank you very much. So we will close this particular session, and we would like to give you a big applause for a good discussion.
Thank you, moderator and members of the panel, for the World Leaders session.